Republic. I like the sound of the word. It means you can come or go, buy or sell, be drunk or sober, live however you please. Some words give you a feeling. Republic is one of those words, gives you a feeling, makes you tight in the throat. Same kind of feeling you get when you see your little boy for the first time, or first time your child walks or shaves and makes his first sound like a man. Some words give you a feeling, a warm feeling inside, and Republic is one of those words. Howdy, I'm Chandler O'Quinn. Welcome to Chandler's Travels. In this episode, we're in San Antonio, talking a little bit about John Wayne and the Alamo, talking a little bit about Elvis, Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, but talking a bit about someone that you've never heard of named Harold O'Quinn Haney. Hope you'll enjoy it. Alright, so I am standing dangerously close to Fort Sam Houston U.S. military installation. So we're going to make this quick, but behind me is the William Clyde building constructed in 1926, and this is a unique piece of San Antonio, but especially personal history. Behind me is in one of those doors was Harold's Tavern, which was operated by Harold O'Quinn Haney, my great-grandfather, from the late 1940s through to the early 1980s. One of the big things that may or may not have happened there, Mr. Harold O'Quinn Haney was sometimes known to tell a tall tale or exaggerate things, but inside that building, there are some pretty famous people who performed, who were just passing through, and all before they were famous. Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and Elvis Presley. So I'm sort of going on a project to see all the different places, or as many different places that Elvis performed in Texas, and behind me is supposedly one of them. So a really fascinating piece of personal history, family history, but also San Antonio and music history, all right there in the William Clyde building. We'll talk a little bit more about Harold O'Quinn Haney in a bit. So I figured that Breckenridge Park would be a little bit of a safer place than just on the street on New Braunfels, with cars going by and all sorts of, and being right next to the fort, to kind of give a nice ambiance while I talk about Harold's Tavern. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing bad has ever happened at Breckenridge Park. Behind me are the train tracks where the last train robbery in Texas took place. So the last train robbery took place on the teeny tiny train tracks here in 1977, I believe. The passengers, the lovely tourists just coming to explore the zoo and the park were held up at gunpoint and got their stuff taken. But got to be a part of history too, being the last people ever to be robbed on a train. So if you see any suspicious looking 70s characters, I realize that I've just described myself, but if you see any, let me know. I'll make sure to hide all of my valuables. So, Harold's Tavern. Harold O'Quinn Haney came to San Antonio in the late 40s. He was born in 1911 in Alto. He went to A&M, but did not graduate. He got a job. It was the early 30s, so it was more important to have a job than to graduate, for sure. He got a job inspecting fruit in the valley, and there he met Melba Dean, who had been married 2 or 3 times before. They actually met, and I think she was tending bar. A real 1920s gal, if ever there was one, which comes back into play later in the story. But they would get married, and then had a little girl named Vivian, and then eventually moved to San Antonio. And the house that they lived in eventually, by the 1950s, 54 I believe is when they purchased it, that's the house that I grew up in. Real lovely little ranch house, real weird bathroom where they have 2 toilets with a bathtub in between, and just 2 shower curtains between you and the next person in the toilet. I'm getting a little too far along here, but back to the tavern. And that's what my great-grandfather, Harold Haney, did. He ran that bar. And the way that my mom describes it, it was just the quintessential mid-century hole in the wall. It had these murals of Mexican sombreros and Sonora cactuses and sort of the Mexican countryside. And my mom remembers it always being very dark and very cold in there. So, crank that AC up, keep yourself cold, keep the beer cold. All sorts of southern bar food, as you would expect. Pickles, gallons of pickled pig's feet, pickled eggs, anything salty so that you can drink more beer. And he would operate it from the late 40s into the 1980s. And especially in that 1940s, 50s period, I gotta say, putting a bar right at the gate of Fort Sam Houston, that's just a license to make money. So lots of soldiers would come through. What's interesting about the 3 notable people that my great-grandfather said went in there is that they all were in the service. So Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, they are both in the Air Force. We know that Johnny Cash lived here in San Antonio. He lived here, and he married his first wife, Vivian, was from San Antonio. Actually, very near to Brackenridge Park is the Whitty Museum, a special collections building. They actually have an old bench that used to be on the Riverwalk that Johnny Cash carved his name and Vivian's name into. So that definitely tracks that it's within the realm of possibility that Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson could have gone into Harold's Tavern and played a tune before anybody knew who they were. Elvis, it's a little harder to pin down. Definitely Elvis was already famous by the time he was in the Army. So if the story is that he was not famous yet, well, he was playing with the Louisiana Hayride and coming through all sorts of little towns and big towns in Texas. That's the whole point of this project, is that Elvis played in Texas more than any other state outside of Nevada. That's Las Vegas. But if you don't count Las Vegas, then definitely Texas is the place that he played the most. So a lot of that was in those early days where he had a few of those Sun records, but not the humongous hit that he would be once he went to RCA. And that's very possible that a young Elvis Presley, just off of the Louisiana Hayride, could have gone into Haney's Tavern and played a song. By far, the greatest story or brush with fame that happened with Harold Haney was that he was almost in John Wayne's Alamo. So in 1960, Harold's Tavern had been operating for many years, and my great-grandfather was somebody who the Will Rogers of the area. Never met a man he didn't like, talked to everybody, and he knew, I guess, that there was a Big John Steakhouse. And at Big John Steakhouse, a lot of the actors who were in the Alamo, they would stay in San Antonio and then go to Bracketville and film and then come back to San Antonio. So a lot of them ate at Big John's, and Big John said, you know who should be your bartender in the big scene with Crockett and all of his Tennesseans should be Harold Haney. And so the actors and Big John came to Mr. Haney several times, and said, it's not really about lines, it's just about having a big guy. He was a big guy. Looks like me, just filled up a doorway. We just need a big guy to be around all these rowdy Tennesseans and give them drinks. And Papaw, that's what my mom called him. Papaw said, no, I can't do it. If I would, I'd get all famous and have to move out to California and leave your grandmother, and I'm just not cut out for that kind of life. And so he turned him down. So my Papaw, he could have been in the Alamo, but turned it down and just decided to live out the real thing of being a tavern owner instead of being a pretend one for John Wayne. I don't know what to say about that. That it could have been something, but it is something within this story that he was so sure that he would be rich and famous that he just couldn't do it. He loved his life too much. If you think about it, somebody who didn't love their life and wanted to have fame and fortune, especially that late in his life, he would have been in his early 50s, that would have jumped at that opportunity, but he loved his life so much. Nope, don't want anything to change. I like my my little ranch house with my toilet and bathtub toilet layout so that I can have somebody to talk to. I don't know why anybody made a bathroom like that. Just, my mom has so many memories of going down to the tavern to help him close up. So my great-grandmother ran daycare centers here in San Antonio in the 60s and 70s. So she wasn't home a lot to cook dinner. So Papaw, he would always fry up meat and potatoes and maybe some peas, but lots of meat and potatoes. And as he would fry the chicken fried steak, he'd have a long Pall Mall in his hand, and he would ash the cigarette into his palm as he would fry up the food. And then Nana would come in, and they would have highballs, 2 highballs, Coke and vodka with some lemon and salt on the rim, and then eat their food. And then around midnight, he would go down to Harold's Tavern. Back then, you could go right through Fort Sam Houston. So take New Braunfels all the way through Fort Sam to Harold's Tavern. And he lived a very late night life, so a lot of the things that he loved were from that time of the day. His favorite radio show was Art Bell's Coast to Coast. He loved watching the Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder, and I just think this is another thing that I know it might be hard to believe, but the man loved history. He loved Texas history. And I could just see, on some random day in 1974, going into Harold's Tavern, and he has some magazine that is talking about some Spanish galleon that went down off of the Gulf Coast, and talking about the gold and silver that could be found. He may have even talked about Jim Bowie's silver mine back in San Saba, just talking about this bit of history with his regulars there at the bar, and then at the end of the night closing up and emptying out all of the pinball and billiards machines, and then going back home to his little ranch house in Alamo Heights. What a life, and a life that he loved so much he wasn't going to give it up to be rich and famous in California. But I think that's it for my reminiscences of a man that I never got to meet, but who is very much a part of my life anyway. Harold O. Quinn Haney and Harold's Tavern. Well, that just about wraps up this episode of Chandler's Travels. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend. All that helps us in spreading the word about our channel and making it so that even more people can come along with me on my journeys. Until next time, vaya con Dios.